Motto is together we win. Each of you exemplify the same creative, diabolical, disruptive work that oftentimes this is forged in the faraway battlefields and in the crucible of combat, where not only together we win, but actually together we bleed.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sentinel. The previous podcast, I spoke about President Trump firing 3 4-star generals and subsequently nominating Lieutenant General Dan Razin Caine to be the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And there's a lot of comments being made about his nomination, and so I decided to go back and look at his background. And it's a very interesting background. But before we go into his background, I just, a couple of admin notes. I just want to remind everybody to make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this channel. Share it with your friends, share it with your neighbors, share it with your ex-wife, share it with your mother-in-law, and even share it with your dog. Share it with everybody, because we want to grow this channel and this community of discourse that we're having. And quite frankly, it's been very good. Out of thousands of comments that we've received, I think I got 1 or 2 that were really not professional. And people forget that I can block them very easily. So please keep it professional, keep it relevant. I'd appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk about General Dan Razin Caine. So that a lot of the comments that were made that he did not have the prerequisites to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because it requires the chairman to be either a former service chief or combatant commander. He's been neither. So I went back and dug into his background, and this guy's got a very interesting background. So let's just kind of talk about it. Let's go through it. So he graduated from VMI in 1990, and he went to flight school years, and then the Air Force, 1992 time frame, had a glut of pilots. So they came up this banking pilot program where they'd assign you a staff job for a couple of years, and then when they needed you, they'd bring you back in and put you back in a pilot seat. So he wasn't too comfortable with that because he came from a family of pilots. So he decided to shop around and, went around looking at all the various reserve and guard components and got a job with the Air National Guard up in Syracuse, New York, and went into the National Guard. He basically stayed in the National Guard up to 2001 as an F-16 pilot, and then was assigned to Joint Base Andrews, commonly known as Andrews Air Force Base, just outside of Washington, D.C. There on 9/11, he happened to be on duty. And, message traffic starts coming in, the World Trade Center's happening, the Pentagon, all that, and they want to get some aircraft airborne very quickly. They organized a group of flights and basically launched them to protect the Capitol. There's a lot of stories been written about them because, some of the aircrafts weren't armed, so they were just going to basically ram the commercial airliner if the next one came. First 2 planes that launched didn't have any weapon systems on them, so their plan was they were just going to ram the next hijacked plane if it threatened the Capitol. His planes, luckily, because he stayed back for about 5-10 minutes longer, and they were able to put some weapon systems on them, the AIM missiles and whatnot, and he launched and spent the day basically patrolling the skies around Washington, D.C. So after that, he deployed to the Middle East in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, and later on also participated in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Then came back to the United States around 2005, and this is an interesting one. He became the special assistant to the Secretary for the United States Department of Agriculture. I didn't even realize we had military special assistants to the Secretary of the United States Department of Agriculture. I mean, my first reaction is, you got to be shitting me. First of all, I wouldn't want that damn job. Second of all, why are we devoting military manpower to such positions? Nonetheless, so he did that, then went back and became the Policy Director for Counterterrorism and Strategy at the Homeland Security Council in the White House. Did well there, and then went back to Iraq as part of the J3 Commander Joint Special Operations Task Force in Balad, Iraq, and did well there. And ironically, he was also JTAC qualified, during his training in the Air Force. And as a JTAC qualified officer, I mean, this is my hats off to him. He actually went out on missions with the assault force, with the Special Operations Assault Forces as a qualified JTAC. So you got to have a lot of respect for an Air Force officer to be able to do that, and I certainly do respect that very much so. Then he came back to the U.S. In around 2010 to 2012, and he was director of operations for the District of Columbia Air National Guard, Washington D.C. And then in 2016, he was the deputy commanding general for the District of Columbia Air National Guard. So this guy's got an incredible amount of Air National Guard experience with intermittent active duty operational experience as well. So, it's very interesting. After that, in 2016 and 2018, he became assistant to vice commander of U.S. Special Operations Command, which is a pretty interesting billet. And then in 2018, for a short period, he was the commanding general for U.S. Central Command Special Operations Component. So, the guy's got a lot of high-level experience in operating forces, in headquarters, per se. And then in 2019 to 2021, for the next 2 years, he was Director of Special Programs and Director of Special Access Programs, Central Office, which is evidently a fairly rigorous job because you're dealing with congressional inquiries and whatnot on a routine basis. And then in November of 2021 to December of 2024, he was the Associate Director for Military Affairs, called ADMA, at the CIA. From there, he retires in December of 2024. During his time in Iraq, President Trump made a surprise visit to Iraq and happened to meet him and was discussing operations against ISIS. And General Caine basically said, "You give me permission, I'll have them finished in a week." And Trump loved that comment, right? So keep that in the back of your mind because it'll come up again. So he retires, and then and then all of a sudden, fast forward 2 months later, he is nominated to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now, here's the rub that I have with it, right? You got Pete Hegseth, that's got a company grade officer, National Guard experience, and then you've got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that's got a senior officer, Air National Guard experience. Now, how do the two complement each other, and what are the weaknesses? Now, I served in the Army, I served in the reserves, and I've also served in the Army National Guard. So I speak from experience and not malice. But you can't equate National Guard service, being a citizen soldier, to active duty service. It's to me, it's a worlds apart. Now, certainly when National Guard units deploy overseas, which I don't know why they do, because their mission primarily is Homeland Defense. That's why they're called the National Guard, right? But nonetheless, when they deploy overseas, by all means, they're fantastic, and a lot of the units that I've seen in operation overseas are very, very good, especially on the aviation side of these. We used a lot of air support from National Guard units in Afghanistan, and they were fantastic. But the problem is this: when you get back to the stateside, they have a 2-day-a-month commitment, generally speaking, right? Whereas as a normal active duty member, you have a 30-day 24/7 commitment as an active duty service member. So they basically get 2 training days a month, where on the active duty side, you're potentially getting 25 training days a month. So there's a big difference in that, right, in terms of commitment. But I certainly respect their service by all means. The other issue comes up is, so he retires in December of 2024, and then all of a sudden this change is made, this week. What role did he play in having this CJCS, CQ Brown, replaced, and also the Assistant Vice Chief of Staff, General Slafey, replaced? Did he play a role in that? What went on in the background? We don't know. So I think it's important for us to understand, was this a political move or whatnot? It's purely speculation, but this is going to come up. I'm certainly not defending CQ Brown. The video that he made literally wrote his sentence, and it was bound to happen. And if I was him, I would have just resigned the day President Trump took over, because he knew he was going to get fired. But nonetheless, that's his personal choice, so we're not going to go there. But my question is, did Razin Caine play a role in the termination of CQ Brown and the Air Force Vice Chief of Staff? It's out there.
Each of you exemplify the same creative, diabolical, disruptive work that
But regardless, I have served with many general officers in my previous life, right? Because I used to teach at the Marine Corps Staff Training Program, where we taught operational planning at the division and higher level. I also taught at the General Officers Warfighting Program. Brand new generals would come in. And I had the privilege to travel across the Marine Corps for 3.5 years and train with all these high-level staffs and to see these generals in action. So I pretty much knew all the generals in the Marine Corps at that time frame, right? And I was a pretty good judge of character and operational experience. In addition to that, I also worked with the Battle Command Training Program, Army's BCTP program, which is sort of the Marine Corps' equivalent of the MACTAF Staff Training Program. That's a fantastic program. And I attended several of the warfighter exercises, all very, very impressive. And to this day, I remember General Shushinsky attending the Army warfighter exercise as the Army Chief of Staff. And I remember his words clearly. He basically told his general officers the reason he's there is to evaluate them, because they say that it takes 5,000 casualties to train a general. And he said, we can't afford 5,000 casualties, and I'm watching it closely. And I'll tell you what, the pucker factor in that room went up really, really quickly. And that's how you hold generals accountable. And I was really, really impressed by General Shushinsky as the Army Chief of Staff. Top-notch guy. And someday I'll do a podcast about him and what happened to him. Really an impressive individual. So I'm a good judge of character. The best general I served with in my time in the Marine Corps was an Air Force general. He happened to be a C-130 pilot, and he was phenomenal. He's a one-star. And, you know, the thing about him was he was really humble, and he knew what he didn't know, and he was willing to listen. And, you know, he'd get all the sides of the issues and then make a decision and just tell you, hey, this is my decision, guys. I've looked at all the pros and cons of it, and this is what I decided. And it was done in such a manner that you wanted to do well for this guy. So I really enjoyed working for him. And I'll give you a quick example, you know, sea story. We were in a foreign country, and I won't go into the name, together, and we had to go for an urgent meeting at that country's military headquarters. So we're driving from the embassy to that military headquarters, and all of a sudden in the distance, I see a protest going on. I tell the driver to turn around. Although we're in an armored vehicle, and so the driver, you know, he's going to listen to me, and he turns around. The general's like, what are you doing? So I said, sir, we're not going through that protest. And his response was, well, we're in an armored vehicle, aren't we? I said, yes, sir, but armored vehicles can also burn very easily. And all of a sudden his light bulb came on, and he's right. And I said, we can always reschedule the meeting. And, you know, he's just a good guy. He's like, yeah, you're absolutely right, you know. He's on board. It wasn't, hey, I'm a general and I want to go to the meeting, and you know, none of this horse shit. He just you know, understood the rationale. He's like, let's do it. And the amazing thing is I didn't have to get his permission. I made a decision, and he backed me up on it. So I really enjoyed working for him. But nonetheless, so the point I'm making with all this is that the best general officer that I served with was Air Force. Now, this guy's an F-16 pilot. And I'll tell you what, I've never flown an F-16. I have no idea about it. I've flown in the back of a F-18. It was terrible. I hated it. You know, I'm not a. That's another story, right? But the issue is this. You know, these guys are sharp dudes. They don't take a schmuck like me and make him an F-16 pilot. You got to be pretty damn shit hot and pretty smart. As an F-16 pilot, Razin Caine is a sharp dude. I can guarantee you that, because I've come across many fighter pilots, and they're pretty damn impressive. So that's the first part. The second part that I would say it concerns me about this decision is he doesn't have a ton of Indo-Pac experience. So if we claim that China is our adversary, wouldn't you want the Chairman and Joint Chiefs of Staff to have a lot of Indo-Pac experience than somebody who's got a ton of Middle East experience? And also, Razin Caine doesn't have a lot of Europe NATO experience. I looked in his bio. So these would be two question marks that I would have. Why did the president select him, lacking this important experience of Indo-Pacific and NATO? But watching his interviews, I'll tell you what, he comes across as a stand-up guy with a lot of operational experience. I'll put the links to his interviews in the comments or in the description, and you can go watch them yourselves.
He said something that I'll never forget to this day. He said, Dan, I don't know what's going to happen out there. I don't know what you're going to see, and I expect you're going to have to make some very difficult decisions. But what I want you to know is you're going to do the right thing. I trust you, and no matter what, I have your back.
He is a stand-up dude. He's got a lot of humility, and he knows how to talk to people. I think that's very important as a general officer. And it's even more important to keep your mouth shut and just listen for a while and get all the ideas and then analyze and synthesize them and then come out with a decision. So I'm quite impressed by him, quite frankly. My sense is that he's going to do fine. The question is what happens to all the other 4-stars that he superseded. He's going from a lieutenant general who doesn't have the service chief or combatant command experience and goes all the way to the most senior officer in the military. So what happens to the other 4-stars? That's yet to be determined. But finally, remember the vignette that I talked about. Another big word, sorry. I remember the incident that I talked about, that he briefly met President Trump in Iraq and they had a dialogue, and that resonated with President Trump. And President Trump said that General Razin Caine, he's some general. He's a real general, not a television general. And Trump makes a statement like that. People eat that shit up. But the issue is this: you got to take a step back and say, okay, President Trump, I'm not sure that you know what a real general is. Let's go back and look at your first administration. You remember that you also picked Mattis. You picked General Kelly as your chief of staff. You picked General McMaster. You also picked General Milley as the chairman, the last chairman, and you picked Flynn. So your batting average ain't all that good, but nonetheless, you're the president. It's your right to pick whoever you want as the chairman, Joint Chief of Staff. And if he gets nominated, I hope he does well. Because if he does well, you're going to do well. And if you do well, the country does well. So it's really all about putting the country before ourselves. And I'm all about that. And so as long as we clean up all the furballs that have been created in the past administrations and set a new azimuth with a clear-cut vision for the future, America's going to do great. But if we don't, if we continue to make knee-jerk decisions, then chances are the wheel's going to fall off. And that's one of the fears I have. Nonetheless, I support the decision. I wish Lieutenant General, soon to be General, Dan Razin Caine, all the best and much success. But before I go, I just want to remind everybody, just share your thoughts and comments, with all the viewers on this channel. Honestly, I try to read all the comments. It's just there's such a flood out there, and I try to respond to as many as I can. And I'm spending literally 3 hours a day on just going through the comments. It's a barrage. It's coming at me. I signed up for it. I'm not whining. I'm not making excuses. So just bear with me. At the end of the day, you're dealing with a Marine infantryman. We ain't the smartest, we ain't the brightest, but I'll tell you what, we can outwork just about anybody. That's all I got. Stay rugged, stay united. Khan out.